On this episode of the Athletic Potential Podcast, we'll be discussing youth training. When is it appropriate to start? Some rules and guidelines, as well as all things that good athletes should be doing throughout their careers. Welcome to the Athletic Potential Podcast, your place to come and get answers to your athletic development questions. We cover a range of topics, all related to helping you to achieve your athletic goals so that you can experience and enjoy the athletic career that you deserve. I am your host, Dr. Mike Mathews. Hey, Alex, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Doing fantastic. So we introduced you a little bit in the beginning here, but I'm going to give you about a couple minutes here. Go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody, where you're from, why are you here at Athletic Potential, and let's say favorite movie from this past month.
Ooh, good stuff. Okay, I am Alex Christensen. I'm a student physical therapist up at the University of Utah. Born and raised in Utah, mostly the Salt Lake Valley. And I'm here doing a sports physical therapy rotation under your host, Mike. It's been a long interest of mine, so I figured why not get some experience and see if it speaks to me, as it were. Movie from the past month. Now, are you going new movie or something that's an old classic rewatched?
Whatever you've watched in the past month, what would be the highlight movie that you watched in the past month?
All right, this one's new to me as a Christmas movie, that is. Die Hard.
Okay.
Ended up throwing that in the list of Christmas movies to watch, and yeah, it's quickly become a favorite Christmas movie.
Excellent. This is fantastic. I'm sure we can pull some references in today. So, all right. Well, we are going to go with our normal format for this one. We've got a few questions that we've had asked of us. And what we'll do is I'll read out the question and then we'll kind of go from there and get the answer from the both of us and hopefully be able to give some good advice to our clientele who is asking this. So let's jump right into the questions. Our first question comes from Sarah. Sarah says, I have a youth softball player, 12 years old. She is small for her age, and I'm worried that she's going to be left behind the other players in her age because of her small size and relative less strength. What are your recommendations for weight training for girls? Is it safe for them to lift at her age? And if not, when do they start? All right, Alex, you get first crack at this one. Okay. Tell me what you think about youth. Let's go recommendations for training youth. We'll start with youth and then maybe we can get more specific into girls.
Okay. So I did a lot of good, fun research. It seemed a lot of it came out of, or at least what came across my path was a lot of the early 2000s and essentially looking at breaking what seemed to be a held myth that exercise and weight training for youth is bad, can stunt growth, maturation, health, all of that. And I mean, without referencing anything in specific, it really, a big consensus is it is not dangerous. It is actually quite safe. I mean, there's obviously going to be a few big caveats that you want to make sure that you're including, but no, it is actually quite well.
What are those caveats?
So one of the big ones is supervision, especially if, or at least that's what I would consider one of them. You don't just, if you've got a 6, 7, 8-year-old that, I want to start getting into weights, and you're just like, all right, I've got some weights in the garage, and just go have at it. You don't know what's going to end up happening. So, I mean, it's not something I would consider they have to be supervised all the time, but it would definitely be worth some form of supervision, whether it's a parent, if you've got the resources, you have a coach, you've got a trainer, if you're on some kind of a sports team, just someone to keep track of, is technique and form, going okay, just basic safety. If they somehow come across someone lifting big, heavy weights, you may not want to start that up really young. Like
Why?
your
Why
power.
not? Why not? Why not lift heavy weights? Say you're a 12-year-old, right? So we've got a 12-year-old.
Yeah, yeah.
Why not have a 12-year-old lift heavy weights?
So heavy weights, I should specify something like a 1 rep max. Like you're going super, super, super heavy for that 1 rep. I feel like you could argue it either way. I feel like at a young age like that, you want to make sure that you have proper technique and form, and that ultimately you have a good base strength platform that can, I don't want to say survive, but that can guide you through that movement. Because I'm sure we've all been lifting weights. If you ever want to go real heavy, if you haven't done that before, you can quickly break form. The body's real good at just figuring out how to do it, to execute that rep. But if long term, if you were to keep lifting like that, you may very well run into an injury at some point. So that's where I'm coming from with the heavy weights, and also relative heavy weights. There's not just one heavy weight for everyone, it's relative to each person. If you took the same 12-year-old, a 10 rep max, a 5 rep max can stimulate the same effect for both of them, yet be completely different numbers. Getting a little off track, but yes, not heavy to the 1 rep max. And we know young children, they still have open growth plates at a certain point. You don't want to cause damage there. You do want to give stress. We do know that we can assist in bone growth with lifting heavy weights. But I guess going back to the technique and form is the big thing that at least comes to my mind right now, where if you're not used to lifting those heavy weights, work up to it. Be safe.
All right. So here's where a common argument we hear all the time is, and you already mentioned it once, but I just want to make sure everybody understands how clear this is, that a lot of people will say, oh, because the child has open growth plates, that if you lift weights when they are young, it will stunt their growth. I can say emphatically that I have searched the research. I have done everything I can. I've talked to a bunch of people. I have yet to see any of that be absolutely true, with the one exception that I did find, and I didn't find it. A friend of mine found it and said, "Hey, I think this is what everybody's talking about." And it was a study of youth, like child labor workers in Japan, who they then measured in regards to adult height. And what they found was that these youth child workers that were doing heavy labor for long hours all ended up being shorter. And but anyways, I personally think that there was nothing that validates that study. I think they just had a subset of population that just ended up being shorter. And so, and that was like a 1970s study or something like that. It's just nothing validates the fact that if you lift weights as a child or as a youth, that it will stunt your growth. Now, you brought up growth plates and injuries to growth plates. You definitely can injure a growth plate when lifting weights, but I'll be the first to tell you, and you've been a part of this here at Athletic Potential, and I've seen a few now, these little leaguer syndromes, which are growth plate injuries, are not happening in our youth athletes that are lifting weights. They're not happening in them. They're only happening in our athletes that are typically under heavy strain and high velocity movements. This is your baseball player who's throwing, right? His arm and elbow get kind of torqued out and get injured. This is your gymnast who is doing, vaults and tumbling routines and those type of things that end up with these growth plate injuries. And what I tell everybody is they weren't actually lifting heavy weights. They were throwing relatively light weights in regards to a baseball. It's just 5 ounce. And then in regards to gymnastics, they're putting their hands on the ground and pushing off and popping off and those type of things. The key here is that it's speed of movement that seems to be more of the injury factor than the weight. And so I get this question a lot. Obviously, we just got it again. And that is youth weight training safe? And the answer is yes. In matter of fact, there's been multiple studies that would suggest that it is actually highly beneficial for youth. Now, let's be very clear on what you just said. Is this I think a lot of people are like, oh, when they think youth strength training, youth weight training, what they see is the kid who's standing out there with a barbell with 245s on each side, straining as hard as he can to lift it off the ground. That's not what's happening here. When we talk about youth strength training, what we're talking about is them picking up weights. And like you said, Alex, they are going through the basic movement patterns. Okay, they're learning how to squat, they're learning how to hinge, they're learning how to push, they're learning how to pull, and typically learn how to pick up weight and carry it over a distance. And my favorite part about training youth is that yes, they want to lift heavy. Although if we talk about youth being like 12 or 13 and younger, okay, I feel like I change this number every time I do the podcast of what a youth constitutes. Realistically, it's like 15 and younger, right? The younger of the youth, this is the 12 and unders. I don't typically have an issue with them trying to lift too much heavy weight because they're really good at self-regulating. They'll go to pick up a bar and be like, yeah, I can't pick that up. Like, or there's a big old kettlebell on the ground. They'll be like, kind of test it, you know what I mean? And be like, whoa, that's heavy. I'm going to go with the small one over there. And they do that fairly well. It's the 14, 15-year-olds that I have to worry about that are like, I have to lift these heavy weights because whatever reason, I don't know. I don't want to say they think they look cool or what, but these are the ones that I have to teach that, look, don't do that. You know what I mean? Because it may create some sort of injury in you. So now that being said, all that come back around, we're totally cool with youth participating in resistance training. This looks like weight training. This looks like bands. This looks like carrying and weighted vests and all these things. Any of those things are okay. All right. Now let's go specifically to female. Is there anything that you have seen, heard, or you believe, Alex, that the girls, so training female athletes, youth female athletes, we should train them differently than male?
I have not seen anything. Doesn't mean it's not out there. I haven't seen anything specific that would differentiate how you would train female versus male in that age range.
And I would second that. With one probably more obvious exception, if we are talking about females that are 16 or younger, we do need to be a little bit cautious of the hormonal changes that happen during that time period in regards to them maybe starting their periods. There is a factor, there's some research to suggest that certain things are more likely to happen during those same time periods. They may be more prone to injury risk to tendons and ligaments depending on their menstruation cycle. So that is the only consideration I have. Now, I'm not asking my clients those questions. All I do is when we send out the waiver or we send out the information, what I always do is I always put it in there if it's a female client, hey, some things to think about in regards to that, those recommendations. And they read it, and then I'll be honest, I don't really train the females really much differently than the males until they start getting a little bit older. But then I do that just because of body changes and the different type of bodies they have. So in regards to, okay, so if I had to ask you this question, Alex, what age would you say is appropriate for youth to start training?
Okay, yeah, good question. From what I came across, 6 or 7 seemed to be the age that research is feels okay with training. I feel like that very well. It just depends on the environment. If a kid's growing up around parents that are maybe, let's say they have a home gym and they're out there in the garage watching them lift, to that kid it's normal, so they may start a little bit earlier. I would say for sure maybe like 5 or 6, maybe even as young as 4, but just keeping it in that simple movement pattern. If they want to come out and lift with the parents in the gym, feel like being part of the family. That's what we do at this time of morning, afternoon, or night. Do it. I feel like you're setting up a great pattern of behavior that's just puts them in a position to have a healthy habit and longevity in life with some type of fitness. So I'd say 5 to 7, especially if this one just came to mind, and it's an interesting one because I heard you say it, and it's so simple and I never would have thought of it. And that is, if they are, 4, 5, 6, and they are showing an interest or vocalizing an interest, then start pursuing it. I would say start with the simple things, body weight exercises, and just let it grow from there. Get that good baseline of strength and just enjoying moving the body. And then, depending on if they're going to get sport specific in the future, or if they start showing an interest in a specific type of athleticism or weightlifting style, then you can start to hone in at that point. But I'm a strong advocate of the body weight. Whether you're 5, 6, and you're starting to lift, if maybe you're late to the game, even up into your 20s or an adult, like body weight is in some realms, I feel like it's underappreciated, and there's a lot to offer. So definitely with the younger ones, 5, 6, even 6, 7, start with some body weight. Let's get some basic fundamental movements. You've mentioned them: push, pulls, carries. These are things we just naturally do as humans. So why not bolster that ability?
Yeah, I totally agree. So we get this question all the time. When is it appropriate and safe, or safe, I should say, appropriate or safe, to start resistance training? And you've heard me say it. If you listen to the podcast long enough, you've heard me say it. Like I start anyone who's interested in lifting weights. I start whenever they're interested, and that may be younger than what you just said. I vividly have a memory of almost 10 plus years ago. I opened a gym, and I remember my now 13-year-old daughter picking up one of the smaller kettlebells when she was 3. And she just would pick it up and then move it across the room a little bit and put it down. And then she picked it up, move it across the room. Well, I mean, relative to her body weight, she probably just did, just under her body weight in a lift and walked with it, in a kettlebell. And a lot of people would have told me that was like, oh, you should never let her do that. She's going to damage something. I'm like, the kid loved it. And she picked it up and walked across the room. It was fun, and she had a great old time with it. You know what I mean? And I just made sure she didn't drop it on her toes or something like that. I was right there with her the whole time, akin to what you were saying about supervision. But I encouraged it. I thought it was great, and coming back around to it, what I tell everybody is if they're interested, let's get them in, let's participate with them. Let's bring them in. Let's teach them what a weight room is, what certain pieces of equipment are, this is a barbell, this is a dumbbell, this is a kettlebell, this is what we can do with them. This is a push up, this is a pull up, these type of things. I think it's very important. If they show an interest, just explore it with them. And I tell the worst thing somebody can do, in my opinion, with a very small, like let's just stay with the 6-year-old athlete or the 6-year-old person who's, I want to explore this thing in the weight room, is they tell them, hey, look, yeah, okay, well, here's your workout. We're going to make you do these workouts, and we're going to have you do these things. Do you know what I mean? And they structure it. And I said, no. In the weight room at 6 years old, this is like play. They are playing in the weight room. Just let it be. I always say I just do my workout that I would normally do, and they follow around me, and they just do what I do. You know what I mean? But if they only do 2 reps and they don't like that one and they don't keep doing it, I'd be like, cool, like, hey, let's go over here. We're going to do this one now. You know what I mean? And they may do 7 total reps the entire workout when I've done 50, but they still enjoyed it and they still had an interest. And then next time they may do more. Next time they may do more. But the idea is, and I think a lot of people miss this, is keep it fun. Don't make it like a grind. I know a lot of times as adults, we make it a grind because it's hard work. We want to go through some discomfort so we can see cool results. But for the youth, keep it fun, keep it light, keep them interested, I'm not trying to say entertain them, but just don't overdo it. Don't take what is exploration to them and make it regimented, right? Now, that being said, if I have an athlete who's 12 years old, so Sarah's talking about, having a youth softball player who's 12. I would argue that if her daughter has not started lifting weights by now, she needs to start. Whether interested or not, the way that youth sports is going is that more athletes are lifting sooner than they did previously. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. Matter of fact, it's actually a good thing for the sport and for their health, in the sense that athletes that are stronger, that know how to move, get injured less. It's pretty simple if you look at the research. Okay. Now, bringing that back to answer it more like a one sentence thing, you know, what are my recommendations? When does it say for youth athletes? And we'll just say girls too, doesn't matter. Youth athletes to start weight training, I say they can start whenever they're interested or 11 years old, whichever one comes first. And that's my opinion what it should be. And because I'll be honest, if you can get an 11-year-old who may not even be interested in sport, but if you can teach them to move, like you said with body weight, I mean, calisthenics are amazing in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? I think my least favorite exercise that I give out in regards to like my athletes that talk to us, they're like, dude, can you not program heel dips? I can't stand heel dips. And I'm like, why? And they're like, I just suck at them. You know what I mean? And I'm like, the heel dips where you stand in a box and you drop all the way down until your heel hits the ground and then you come back out. It's a single leg squat. They don't use any weight and they whine and complain all the time. And I'm like, it's a body weight exercise that it blows them up every time. So, but you can do a lot of work with body weight. But that being said, if you're 11 years old, you have an 11-year-old, it's really a good idea to get them starting to know how to move, to start moving against resistance, and to start building that level of athleticism that's just going to help them in life generally. So I think in regards to, if we're talking to you, Sarah, on this one, I think in regards to kind of give you a more straightforward answer, what are recommendations for weight training for girls? I like Alex's thing, start with body weight. All my athletes start with body weight and have to graduate to a weight. They have to show me they know how to squat without a weight. They have to show me they know how to hinge without a weight. They have to show me they can do a push-up or a push without a weight, some sort of row without a weight. And I hate to say it, but you can't carry no weight, but so we carry weights without. I just let them pick up weights and carry it, right? But the idea is they have to show me good movement and then I'll give them a weight. And then from there, we progress them as appropriate. And the other thing I tell everybody is, and it's no secret, there's a lot of people that are saying this, and that is if you have an athlete that wants to play at a higher level and you have that athlete start at 11 years old and they do 2 workouts a week until they are done playing, their career is over, okay? The amount of workouts and accumulation of strength and physicality that they are going to accumulate starting at 11 will absolutely overtake anybody who starts over at 14 or 15, no matter how many workouts that person does in a week. Because there's only a certain speed at which the body can adapt. Okay. And if you are not putting like a consistent effort in, twice a week is what's needed. And if you start at 11, the amount of physical change that happens when you do that, it'll just overtake anybody who starts weight training at 14, 15, 16. And I know I'm going to get all these people like, well, this person didn't start till they're 17 and they're lifting the gym. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Tell me what their history is. Tell me what their genetics look like. You know, was mom and dad a crazy athlete? And maybe they did, and that's cool. But I'll be honest, if you put 2 of the same people together, one started at 11, one started at 14, the 11-year-old did twice a week till they were 18, and the 14-year-old did 4 times a week until they were 18. I take the 11-year-old every time. They will be further advanced than the 14-year-old because there's more time for adaptation to happen. And we're getting into the weeds, Sarah, and I apologize. I know it's like, I hear the feedback I get is like, we like straightforward answers. Cool. Sarah, whenever they're interested or 11 years old, so let's get your 12-year-old going. Get her moving on like good movements first, squat, hinge, push, pull, carry. Make sure she can do those really well. Okay. And then from there, you just add weight to that. I know the next question you're most likely to ask, Sarah, is, so do I need kettlebells? Do I need dumbbells? Do I need bands? Whatever. Here's what I would do for your 12-year-old right now. You need essentially 2 pieces of equipment. First, go find TRX or a suspension trainer type thing. If you need help with that, reach out to us. If you just Google suspension trainers, you'll see or if you go to Amazon and do it, you'll get a whole bunch of options. And it doesn't have to be TRX. I have no affiliation. But the point is suspension trainers, you need those. And then, my opinion, go get a weighted vest. A weighted vest that I can go down to 5 pounds and maybe up to 15, maybe 20 pounds. Okay. Because I can tell you right now, we could probably train for 6 months with a weighted vest and TRXs and get tremendous results in our athletes. And you probably just spent $50, maybe $100 if you went on a little pricier end. Okay. So, Sarah, there you go. Get her going. If you have questions about it, reach out to us here. We're happy to help you. If not, just get her started in movements. It's a good idea to get her started now. And if you have younger ones that are talking about if they're interested in the gym, go ahead. Like, let's get them moving as well. All right. Okay, Alex, anything you want to add for Sarah on that one?
No, 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 yes. The TRX is a beautiful addition, and it can turn body weight into something nasty. So you can progress, you can regress, and yeah, it adds a lot of versatility. So yeah, absolutely love that.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to switch gears and go to another question here. This question comes from Nathan. What are your recommendations for any athletes, young people to old people, to decrease injuries? Are there certain things that you tell your clients that apply for everyone that help to keep them healthy? I did a terrible job of reading that out loud. All right, one more time. What are your recommendations for any athletes, young people to old people, to decrease injuries? Are there certain things that you tell your clients that apply for everyone that help them to keep them healthy? This is a great question, and Nathan, I love this question because what it does is it allows us here at Athletic Potential to go, okay, what are we doing? And what are we doing for nearly all of our clients, regardless of sport, regardless of age, regardless of injury, regardless of any of those things? It's kind of like, what is it that works no matter what? And these are fun questions to answer because it kind of simplifies things. So I'm going to let Alex take this one away a little bit. He's been here for 12 weeks this week, right? So the idea is like,
Yeah.
or something like that. So you've kind of seen a general pattern of what's kind of always used here. And I think that may be a cool perspective for everybody to listen to, because I mean, I'll be honest, yeah, I started Athletic Potential, so I probably miss a lot that I just know I do every time. But you've been seeing it for these past many weeks. What do you see almost every day, day in, day out, in regards to things that we say, things that we do, exercises that we do?
Yeah, the first one, which I will say it took me a little bit by surprise the first time I heard you say it. Um, and now after 12 weeks of really considering it and to some extent having lived it, if it hurts, don't do it. Like it, it it's interesting, the contrary view to that I have definitely seen. I'm not here to say it's good or bad, but I've seen how much of a game changer it can be, both in the clinic and just as decent advice. That's that's the first one that comes to mind. I ended up looking at a little bit of research that took a different view because I know there's a lot of ways that you can approach this question. Some better than others. One of them that I don't know if it's focused on enough or at all. We'll find out, and that is behavior. So the only time I will strike a quoting the research, it was behavior, the key factor for sports injury prevention. It was a gentleman out of Netherlands, Amsterdam, and it was looking at behavior surrounding exercise and strength training or just athleticism and injuries that can happen. And the big thing here is they have three main tenets: individual, social, and environment. So if the individual is in the gym or they're exercising and you just like throw care to the wind, during your lift, maybe you noticed you're doing something a little bit heavier and you just want to get that number. You just dropped the behavior of safety for that number. So you sacrificed it. So I feel like the behavior you can apply it in so many ways, just like that throwing care to the wind. If you're an athlete and you're a little bit too focused on performance in the game or performance in the gym as you're hoping and as you see it translate onto the field or the pitch or the court, you can take that too far to the extreme. You could say the same with, that like winning. It's great to be competitive. So I'm not here to bag on, being competitive. It has its advantages. And I feel like this is one area, and it's hard to say because, how many people have been competitive and they never had an injury? How many have and they did get the injury? But definitely just remembering winning, is winning worth that injury? So just, and then the last thing to that is just that mentality. When you're going either onto your field or into the gym, don't just go in there and you're banging away reps. Have that mindset of what are you here for, and then behave accordingly. You're there so you can have better health, more strength, so you can be more athletic, so you can focus on a certain movement in a phase of pitching or whatever it may be. So make sure and train and keep that behavior so you can continually train and then not get to the point where you're seeing injuries and now having to seek the medical field in some degree, and now you're not able to play or enjoy your life, or now moving hurts. So the behavioral aspect, a little bit more on the psychology realm, I guess it could be considered, but that's it was an interesting one for me to come across and kind of delve into that idea.
Well, so I think it's a great way to look at it because you've heard me say this. We train a lot of groups here, and right now we've got a fairly large group in the afternoons. And I think you've heard me say it enough times. Well, maybe you haven't, but either way, you talk about behaviors, right? Well, we have rules of the weight room in regards to those athletes that we train. And it's one of the first things that we cover just to make sure that everybody knows the expectations. We talk about rule number one. You already talked about that. If it hurts, don't do it, right? That's kind of like a general rule. If something hurts, it's not worth pushing through it. Now I get it. Like there's certain amounts of discomfort that exists that are not true pain. They're just more, just heavy amounts of discomfort that you have to push your body through. And that's okay. But you got to know the difference between real pain and that. Now, putting that aside, we have what we call rule number one in the weight room. And rule number one of the weight room, which is behavior, by the way, rule number one in the weight room is you should never get hurt in the weight room. The weight room is a place where we build athletes, not where we break them down. The weight room is a place where you should be, almost all of the variables are controlled and therefore should be a very safe place. And nobody's winning gold medals. Nobody's, striking out somebody in the ninth inning in the weight room. The weight room is all preparatory. So rule number one of the weight room is that we should never see injuries in the weight room. Now I have subsets of rules from that, which are all behavioral based, like you just said, Alex. The first one is we pick up weights and put down weights like professionals, meaning we actually care about our form when we pick up weights and put them down. Now, a lot of people are like, well, that makes total sense. I go, yeah, but how many times have we seen it? Somebody finishes their last rep, and instead of finishing it by, on a deadlift, they get to the very top. They're like, yeah. And then they go to put it down and they don't hinge. They bend at their back. They kind of just slam the weight to the ground. They don't drop it per se, but they just kind of like put it down with really poor form. Well, that's not putting it down like a professional. That's not how you do that. Right. So we do that to keep people from getting injured. And like you said, like they want a number, so they sacrifice form for a number. We have a subset rule for that as well. It's called no bro lifting, right? I know I just offended a bunch of people, and that's fine. But the idea is like it's not about how much you can lift. It's about how much you can lift well. I mean, we're in a place right now, without dating the podcast, where we're on the cusp of spring baseball and spring softball season. We have done a tremendous amount of work with our groups for the last 2.5 months. The time to lift heavy is over. It's done. We're not doing it. I mean, you heard me say it the last 2 days in the weight room, and that is, look, guys, lighten up the weights a little bit. Make the movements really clean. Have very good form. Move the weights just a little bit faster. Don't worry about hitting these big numbers, right? I've been saying it because good, clean movement is way more effective right now than trying to lift heavy. We did that already. We're done with that. Right. And so we've got, the rules of the weight room. You should never get hurt in the weight room. The first rule is that you're going to pick up a weight and put it down like a professional. The second is there's no bro lifting. Make sure you can always get the lift. Make sure that it's appropriate weight for you. That's that part. And then the third part is the weight room is not a playground. This is not a place where you're going to run around and like try and tackle each other or throw stuff at each other or anything like that. We take care of our weights, we put them away, right? It's not a playground. It's not, we don't have it a mess. If people understand, and we're like, we kind of went down this behavioral train with what you said, Alex, and that's good. I think it's good. But if people understood these rules, and anybody, this is anybody that goes to the gym, anybody who's lifting weights, if people understood these rules, we'd see a lot less injuries, a lot less injuries. But the problem is people get competitive with themselves or with other people, and that's fine. I think competition's great. I love working out with somebody or against somebody per se. Do you know what I mean? But I also understand that if I work out and I strain something and I can't work on somebody's shoulder, like that's not okay. Like my purpose at that moment is just be healthy, right? And the same thing with somebody's got to throw a ball. Somebody's the pitcher for softball's got to, be able to get into certain positions to pitch. If you're doing movements and performing things that are contrary to your ability to perform your task, it's not worth doing. So, Nathan, to kind of come back around to your question a little bit, if you obey those rules right there, you're going to stay healthier. You're just going to avoid injuries in the gym, right? Yeah, you should push the envelope a little bit. Yeah, you should lift heavier so you can get stronger, but understand there are plenty of ways to do that. Plenty of ways to do that. Okay. And I get this question a lot from like maybe the adults that are like, well, when I was younger, I used to go do all these like, go and I do like a couple maxes and all these kind of things. And I just don't feel like every time I go to do that, I get aches and pains and all this kind of stuff. And I say, that's true. You're right. I mean, I'm not a young athlete anymore. And I can tell you right now, the days of my 1 rep maxes are gone. I don't do any 1 rep maxes anymore. Anybody who I train who's of my age or older, I definitely don't have them do 1 rep maxes. In my opinion, they should be doing 2 rep maxes at the most. Like this should never get to a 1 rep. Unless you've been training it, unless you're a power lifter, unless you're a strength athlete who has maintained this over time, I really just don't suggest 1 rep maxes. If you want to do a 1 rep max, that's great. Go ahead. My personal opinion is you hire a trainer, understand why you want to do 1 rep max. Okay. If you want to start competing in powerlifting, great. I need you to go start talking to powerlifters. And I can guarantee you, having known a lot of powerlifters, they're not going to have you do 1 rep maxes right off the bat. You know what they're going to have you do? Hey, you need to do 4 weeks of this 2 sets of 5 thing. You know what I mean? I mean, if you want a great workout to get it back into 1 rep maxes, how about if you go search up Dan John and do easy strength, just go do that for 40 days. Guys, I broke more PRs in my lifts doing that program than I did trying to chase 1 rep maxes, period. So anyways, shameless plug. So Nathan, there you go. There's one little thing you can do. Look up Dan John, easy strength. That'll keep you healthy. So besides behavior, Alex, anything else that maybe you've seen what we do here? Let's go exercise specific. Are there certain exercises that you see us do with our athletes almost every day and almost every athlete?
Yeah. Yeah. Body weight. I mean, it can, between some of if we're getting to like clients or some of the youth baseball, I'm going
Anybody.
back to body weight, and specifically working on trunk control is a big one. And I've noticed that it's in nearly every lift, if not every lift. There is a heavy component on either you're stabilizing the trunk and other parts of the body is moving, or you're stabilizing and the trunk is also moving. But it seems to be one that, whether it's being directly targeted or it's indirectly in support of what you're doing, and that goes with your weight training as well, but a lot of core work, and not what you may tend to see at the gym or in videos, not your
Well, that's not
crunches
good.
and all
We
that.
might have just lost Alex.
It's first getting a good base
Hopefully he will come back
static
any moment
control, and then once you have that mastered, which is fun that you mentioned earlier, with all some of those rules in the gym, it's body weight, and it's funny to see how quickly some of the core can be sussed out with even just a push-up, and then once that's good, then you're moving on to more dynamic things. But yeah, definitely there's that emphasis of of core, or at least that's what I've taken out of it. There's, I'm sure, quite a bit that I've missed, and that's on me. But yeah, definitely it's almost like the core trumps all. Spinal stability.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a part of that, and I can tell you that I don't know if I've ever thought that we've really been like, oh, we're going to build it around the core and then move out, right? I think it's, yeah, that's a good point. I've never really thought of it that way. A lot of what we do is we call it proximal to distal in our fancy PT jargon, right? We start with the middle of the body and then work our way out. You have to have good proximal or good core control to be able to push, pull, and run and jump and all that stuff. Otherwise, it just wouldn't work. And we've all seen those people that don't have a good core control. Like this is newborn giraffe type symptom. Yeah, they run. It looks like a yard sale, like that kind of thing, right? Nothing against those guys. It's just what it is. Like we got to build it up. We have some pretty elite level athletes that look like a yard sale when they run. They're just athletically gifted that they can still do it. The crazy part is when we actually get them to get stronger in the core and stabilize, and all of a sudden we see really cool things. But anyways, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think a whole lot about the core stuff. Nathan, to kind of come back to your question in regards to core, which I think is tremendously important, although when we say the word core, I feel like we have an entire 2-week podcast series to talk about, which we are not going to do. But the core training is not a lot of people think it is. If you have questions about core training, just go to my YouTube and just look up like Palloff press and curl ups and bird dogs and that kind of thing, planks. That is kind of what we look at core training. We don't do crunches or sit ups. And a lot of people are like, but they're whatever. I just don't do them. I just haven't seen the results in the clients that we normally treat and work with. The one thing I would add, Nathan, is that a long time ago, I had a fun little question posed to me, and that was, do we really need to warm up as much as we warm up? I mean, some of my athletes are doing 40-minute warm-ups, which I'll be honest is way too long, in my opinion. But we have some people that are warming up for a tremendous amount of time. And I think it got a little overdone for a while. And then I've got athletes that I have to like beg them to do anything for a warm-up. Right. I mean, I had a professional baseball player one time, pitcher, throws high 90s. He would literally show up, lay on a foam roller for no benefit. He would just lay on it, just not working on anything. He just did it because I think he just liked it. Then he would get up, do like 3 arm circles, both directions, pick up a little plyo ball, throw it 5 times up against the wall, look at me and say, I'm ready to throw. And that dude would go out and throw and be fine. Literally be fine. That's exactly how he warmed up in games. He's played in the minor leagues for a while. Very good player. And that's how his warm-ups were. And he got away with it. And I'm like, man. Now he was huge. He was 6'7" and 250, but maybe that was it. But the point is that I can be honest. All of our clients, everybody does a warm-up. So I don't want to understate the warm-up, although I would tell you that basic warm-ups trump complex warm-ups almost every time. So you got to do a warm-up. You got to do some sort of like mobility work on the hips and the shoulders. Just doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have to do it. Now, mobility work can be controlled mobility where we're not actively like stretching somebody. We're literally just teaching them to move through their range of motion and feel good. Even my 6'7" baseball dude who never warmed up still did arm circles, right? He got his arms going. He got his shoulder ball and sockets going. I think it's important that we do that. I think it's important that you do. Here we go. Alex, you called me out. Good. Core. I think we got to turn the abs on, turn the glutes on, turn the back on, just enough to kind of get us ready to go for whatever it is we're doing. And then at some point, we got to get our heart rate up a little bit to get the body ready to move. But I think if you just do those core concepts, you'll be fine. Everybody has their own methods, and I get that. But depending on what you're trying to do, I mean, if you're trying to throw a baseball high 90s, and 30 appearances in a year, yeah, you're probably going to have to do a little bit more maintenance than, say, somebody who's, hacks it out in his home gym doing basic lifts, just trying to maintain strength. So I'd argue warm-ups. To be very, very specific, if you go to my YouTube channel, Nathan, foam roll thoracic mobilization, that is something that not one person doesn't do. Like everybody does that. And I don't even ask them to do it. They just do it because it feels amazing. So there you go. That would be the one exercise we'll talk about. All right, Nathan, I think we went way into the weeds on this, and that's okay. But what I would say, Nathan, is realistically, depending on where you're at and what you're trying to do, I think it's really important that you train with a purpose. You have a reason to train, even if it's just to maintain strength. If you're just like, well, I just don't want to get old as fast, there's pretty good routines that are designed to help you maintain strength and power, and just know that that's okay, and that you need to train for your whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Alex, anything to add for Nathan here? Things that you would say that are kind of non-negotiable in regards to exercise or keeping your body healthy? I mean, we didn't even talk about sleep or anything. Like, woo, that's a big question, Nathan. But Alex, what do you got?
Yeah. Now listen to your body. You know your body better than anyone. That's the only other piece. I mean, yes, as you mentioned, we could talk about a whole host of other topics. But yeah, don't, have a little faith in your body. If some people, they may run on a sleep deficit and their body feels okay to go to the gym. Some maybe they need that hour and their body tells them no. Listen to your body, have that connection with your body, and don't forget to have fun through the process.
Yeah, you're not going to do. There's only so much that you can do without having at least some sort of fun or having an outcome that is favorable to you. So that would be definitely something to think about. So, all right. Well, we only have the 2 questions for today, but I thought we did a good job. I think we kind of hit the questions as they needed to be. We gave a lot of different answers, a lot of different insights. The hope is that both Sarah and Nathan here, is if you're listening to this, that when you listen to these, that it kind of sparks some thought. And then in regards to like frameworks of what you should do next, those type of things, I think we gave you some things you can start working on. Again, if you have questions in regards to what to do, how to lift, what you should be doing, what your athlete should be doing, those type of things, we definitely want to help out if we can at Athletic Potential. You can always reach out to us, give us a call, shoot us an email. You can find us on social medias as well. Like, just DM us there. The idea is, again, we're just trying to make sure we get everybody good information so that everybody can essentially accomplish all that they want to do athletically, even if that's just walking around the park with your grandkids, or if that's, trying to make it to the next level in college softball. So we appreciate everybody tuning into the podcast. We really appreciate Alex on all that he has done over the last many, many weeks here at Athletic Potential. He's kind of made himself a little bit of a key person here. It's going to be a little rough when he leaves. I know I'm going to have some readjustments and some long days without his help, but he's done a great job. And we appreciate you, Alex, for coming on the podcast. And we thank everybody for tuning in. Please, everybody, rate and review the podcast, and wherever you listen, make sure you tell your friends. And if you do have questions for the podcast, just click the link, ask your questions. We'll get them answered. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. And until next time, thanks. Everybody, just want to say thank you for listening to the Athletic Potential Podcast. If you do have questions for the podcast, please visit the website, www.athletic-potential.com/podcast. You'll find a button there to ask your question. Please input your information and your question, and we will answer any and all questions we get. And thank you again for listening. If you do get a chance, please rate and review the podcast. And until next time, thanks.